From Chapter 1. Perseus. Then Athene smiled and said, "Be patient and listen, for if you forget my words, you will indeed die. You must go northward to the country of the Hyperboreans, who live beyond the pole, at the sources of the cold north wind, till you find the 3 gray sisters, who have but 1 eye and 1 tooth between them. You must ask them the way to the nymphs, the daughters of the evening star, who dance about the golden tree in the Atlantic island of the west. They will tell you the way to the Gorgon, that you may slay her, my enemy, the mother of monstrous beasts. Once she was a maiden as beautiful as morn, till in her pride she sinned a sin at which the sun hid his face, and from that day her hair was turned to vipers, and her hands to eagle's claws. And her heart was filled with shame and rage, and her lips with bitter venom, and her eyes became so terrible that whosoever looks on them is turned to stone. And her children are the winged horse and the giant of the golden sword. And her grandchildren are Echidna, the witch adder, and Geryon the 3-headed tyrant, who feeds his herds beside the herds of hell. So she became the sister of the Gorgons, the daughters of the queen of the sea. Touch them not, for they are immortal, but bring me only Medusa's head." "And I will bring it," said Perseus. "But how am I to escape her eyes? Will she not freeze me too into stone?" "You shall take this polished shield," said Athene, "and when you come near her, look not at her yourself, but at her image in the brass, so you may strike her safely. And when you have struck off her head, wrap it, with your face turned away, in the folds of the goatskin on which the shield hangs. So you will bring it safely back to me, and win to yourself renown, and a place among the heroes who feast with the immortals upon the peak where no winds blow." Then Perseus said, "I will go, though I die in going. But how shall I cross the seas without a ship? And who will show me my way? And when I find her, how shall I slay her, if her scales be iron and brass?" Now, beside Athene, appeared a young man more light-limbed than the stag, whose eyes were like sparks of fire. By his side was a scimitar of diamond, all of one clear precious stone, and on his feet were golden sandals, from the heels of which grew living wings. Then the young man spoke, "These sandals of mine will bear you across the seas and over hill and dale like a bird, as they bear me all day long. For I am Hermes, the far-famed Argus slayer, the messenger of the immortals who dwell on Olympus." Then Perseus fell down and worshipped, while the young man spoke again. "The sandals themselves will guide you on the road, for they are divine and cannot stray. And this sword itself, the Argus slayer, will kill her, for it is divine, and needs no second stroke. Arise and gird them on, and go forth." So Perseus arose, and girded on the sandals and the sword. And Athene cried, "Now leap from the cliff and be gone." But Perseus lingered. "May I not bid farewell to my mother and to Dictys? And may I not offer burnt offerings to you and to Hermes, the far-famed Argus slayer, and to Father Zeus above?" "You shall not bid farewell to your mother, lest your heart relent at her weeping. I will comfort her and Dictys until you return in peace. Nor shall you offer burnt offerings to the Olympians, for your offerings shall be Medusa's head. Leap, and trust in the armor of the immortals." Then Perseus looked down the cliff and shuddered, but he was ashamed to show his dread. Then he thought of Medusa and the renown before him, and he leapt into the empty air. And behold, instead of falling, he floated, and stood and ran along the sky. He looked back, but Athene had vanished, and Hermes. And the sandals led him on northward ever, like a crane who follows the spring toward the east fens. So Perseus started on his journey, going dry-shod over land and sea, and his heart was high and joyful, for the winged sandals bore him each day a 7 days' journey, and he turned neither to the right hand nor the left, till he came to the unshapen land, and the place which has no name. And 7 days he walked through it on a path which few can tell, till he came to the edge of the everlasting night, where the air was full of feathers, and the soil was hard with ice. And there at last he found the 3 grey sisters, by the shore of the freezing sea, nodding upon a white log of driftwood, beneath the cold white winter moon. And they chanted a low song together, why the old times were better than the new. There was no living thing around them, not a fly, not a moss upon the rocks. Neither seal nor seagull dare come near, lest the ice should clutch them in its claws. The surge broke up in foam, but it fell again in flakes of snow, and it frosted the hair of the 3 grey sisters and the bones in the ice cliff above their heads. They passed the eye from one to the other, but for all that they could not see. And they passed a tooth from one to the other, but for all that they could not eat. And they sat in the full glare of the moon, but they were none the warmer for her beams. And Perseus pitied the 3 grey sisters, but they did not pity themselves. So he said, O venerable mothers, wisdom is the daughter of old age. You therefore should know many things. Tell me, if you can, the path to the Gorgon. Then one cried, Who is this who reproaches us with old age? And another, This is the voice of one of the children of men. Then one cried, Give me the eye, that I may see him. And another, Give me the tooth, that I may bite him. But Perseus, when he saw that they were foolish and proud, and did not love the children of men, left off pitying them. Then he stepped close to them, and watched till they passed the eye from hand to hand. And as they groped about between themselves, he held out his own hand gently, till one of them put the eye into it, fancying that it was the hand of her sister. Then he sprang back, and laughed, and cried, Cruel and proud old women, I have your eye, and I will throw it into the sea, unless you tell me the path to the Gorgon, and swear to me that you tell me right. Then they wept, and chattered, and scolded, but in vain. They were forced to tell the truth, though when they told it, Perseus could hardly make out the road. You must go, they said, foolish boy, to the southward, into the ugly glare of the sun, till you come to Atlas the giant, who holds the heaven and the earth apart, and you must ask his daughters, the Hesperides, who are young and foolish like yourself, and now give us back our eye, for we have forgotten all the rest. So Perseus gave them back their eye, and he leapt away to the southward, leaving the snow and the ice behind. And the terns and the seagulls swept laughing round his head, and called to him to stop and play. And the dolphins gambolled up as he passed, and offered to carry him on their back. And all night long the sea nymphs sang sweetly. Day by day the sun rose higher, and leaped more swiftly into the sea at night, and more swiftly out of the sea at dawn, while Perseus skimmed over the billows like a seagull, and his feet were never wetted, and leapt on from wave to wave, and his limbs were never weary, till he saw far away a mighty mountain, all rose red in the setting sun. Perseus knew that it was Atlas, who holds the heavens and the earth apart. He leapt on shore and wandered upward, among pleasant valleys and waterfalls. At last he heard sweet voices singing, and he guessed that he was come to the garden of the nymphs, the daughters of the evening star. They sang like nightingales among the thickets, and Perseus stopped to hear their song. But the words which they spoke he could not understand. So he stepped forward, and saw them dancing hand in hand around the charmed tree, which bent under its golden fruit, and round the tree foot was coiled the dragon, old Ladon, the sleepless snake, who lies there forever, listening to the song of the maidens, blinking and watching with dry, bright eyes. Then Perseus stopped, not because he feared the dragon, but because he was bashful before those fair maids. But when they saw him, they too stopped, and called to him with trembling voices. Who are you, fair boy? Come dance with us around the tree in the garden, which knows no winter, the home of the south wind and the sun. Come hither and play with us a while. We have danced alone here for 1,000 years, and our hearts are weary with longing for a playfellow. I cannot dance with you, fair maidens, for I must do the errand of the immortals. So tell me the way to the Gorgon, lest I wander and perish in the waves." Then they sighed and wept and answered, "The Gorgon? She will freeze you into stone. It is better to die like a hero than to live like an ox in a stall. The immortals have lent me weapons, and they will give me wit to use them." Then they sighed again and answered, "Fair boy, if you are bent on your own ruin, be it so. We know not the way to the Gorgon, but we will ask the giant Atlas above upon the mountain peak." So they went up the mountain to Atlas their uncle, and Perseus went up with them. And they found the giant kneeling, as he held the heavens and the earth apart. They asked him, and he answered mildly, pointing to the seaboard with his mighty hand, "I can see the Gorgons lying on an island far away. But this youth can never come near them, unless he has the hat of darkness, which whosoever wears cannot be seen." Then cried Perseus, "Where is that hat, that I may find it?" But the giant smiled. "No living mortal can find that hat, for it lies in the depths of Hades, in the regions of the dead. But my nieces are immortal, and they shall fetch it for you, if you will promise me one thing, and keep your faith." Then Perseus promised, and the giant said, "When you come back with the head of Medusa, you shall show me the beautiful horror, that I may lose my feeling and my breathing, and become a stone forever. For it is weary labor for me to hold the heavens and the earth apart." Then Perseus promised, and the eldest of the nymphs went down and into a dark cavern among the cliffs, out of which came smoke and thunder, for it was one of the mouths of hell. And Perseus and the nymphs sat down 7 days and waited trembling, till the nymph came up again, and her face was pale, and her eyes dazzled with the light, for she had been long in the dreary darkness, but in her hand was the magic hat. Then all the nymphs kissed Perseus and wept over him a long while, but he was only impatient to be gone, and at last they put the hat upon his head, and he vanished out of their sight. But Perseus went on boldly, past many an ugly sight, far away into the heart of the unshapen land, till he heard the rustle of the Gorgons' wings, and saw the glitter of their brazen talons, and then he knew that it was time to halt, lest Medusa should freeze him into stone. He thought a while with himself, and remembered Athene's words. He arose aloft into the air, and held the mirror of the shield above his head, and looked up into it, that he might see all that was below him. And he saw the 3 Gorgons sleeping. He knew that they could not see him, because the hat of darkness hid him, and yet he trembled, as he sank down near them, so terrible were those brazen claws. 2 of the Gorgons were foul as swine, and lay sleeping heavily with their mighty wings outspread. But Medusa tossed to and fro restlessly, and as she tossed, Perseus pitied her. But as he looked from among her tresses, the vipers' heads awoke, and peeped up with their bright dry eyes, and showed their fangs and hissed. And Medusa, as she tossed, threw back her wings, and showed her brazen claws. Then Perseus came down and stepped to her boldly, and looked steadfastly on his mirror, and struck with Herpes stoutly once. And he did not need to strike again. Then he wrapped the head in the goatskin, turning away his eyes, and sprang into the air aloft, faster than he ever sprang before. For Medusa's wings and talons rattled as she sank dead upon the rocks, and her 2 foul sisters woke and saw her lying dead. Into the air they sprang yelling, and looked for him who had done the deed. They rushed, sweeping and flapping, like eagles after a hare. And Perseus's blood ran cold as he saw them come howling on his track, and he cried, "Bear me well now, brave sandals, for the hounds of death are at my heels." And well the brave sandals bore him, aloft through cloud and sunshine, across the shoreless sea, and fast followed the hounds of death. But the sandals were too swift, even for Gorgons, and by nightfall they were far behind, 2 black specks in the southern sky, till the sun sank, and he saw them no more.